Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. What is the date today? Is it the 16th?
60,
Eight,
18th.
18th.
18th. Only 2 days off. That's the summer holidays. But it's the 18th of August today. We should have had these guys back on in July, but we've all had a very busy summer. That's our excuse anyway. But we're glad to be back to keep up to date with all that's happening in the Highland Council region. And so we have back John Grafton and we have back Andrew Baxter. And if we just get started straight away, and maybe we can have a wee chat after we've gone through some issues and stuff. But if you would like to speak, John, first, and then what we'll do is if you bring up one of the issues that you'd like to discuss, and then we can get Andrew to respond, and then Andrew can bring up a subject as well. And if we proceed like that, I'm sure we'll get along famously. So off you go, John, if you don't mind. What would you like to speak about first?
Lovely. Thank you very much, Eddie. Yes, good morning, everybody. It's good morning here anyway. The one I'd like to bring up at the moment is about the road from Tom Down outside Glengarry to Kinloch Not that it's sort of, I know it's important to the residents there, and other people might feel, well, okay, that's miles away from me. It doesn't concern me. But the main issue is about SSE, SSEN, Balfour Beatty, contractors, big projects that actually get in the way of local communities. And that's where I'm coming at it from. And it's not isolated. Spee and Bridge are looking at several large projects that are going to really affect them. And I'm sure lots of people in the area will be able to come up and say, yes, we're affected by this. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today. I've just had a meeting with Kristen from the Roads Department, and she is actually at the moment spending half her working week on this one particular issue. The road is a floating tarmac road. It sits on top of peat. And when SSE decided they were going to take all the big trucks through there, they hadn't done a full assessment on the road. Highland Council objected to it, but the Scottish Government said, no, 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 go ahead. So in that, the Highland Council and us councillors are pretty disempowered. So we're doing the best we can. And there's a lot, I think, of lessons to be learned from this situation of big contractors coming in with their big heavy trucks. They haven't really properly consulted, and they haven't properly looked at the job they're meant to be doing. And then we end up as the communities suffering all the problems with that. At the moment, Kinloch can only get access between 6 p.m. and 5 a.m. to their homes and their villages. It's cut the tourist trade completely. Local youth hostels are suffering, and it's all very quiet because nobody really hears about it, because it's a little tiny village stuck away in the middle of the wildest area in the United Kingdom, which is Knoydart. So, yeah, that's my quick summation. I don't know whether Andrew's got any comments.
It's a really interesting point that John raises, and I suppose I'm fortunate in my ward that we've been less touched by some of these infrastructure projects, it, particularly involving electric or electricity infrastructure. But I think it illustrates a point that is of concern to me. Now, people that have listened or watched this podcast in the past will know that I bang on about centralisation to Inverness and Highland Council a lot. But this is an illustration of actually, over the last 10 or so years, centralisation has gone much further than that. And we've seen much more centralisation to the Scottish Government down in Edinburgh, illustrated by John's point that despite a Highland Council objection, the Scottish Government have signed this off. And I really do have a problem with companies like SSEN and SSE and some of our public bodies pretty much being unaccountable to us, the public, us as councillors, and our other elected representatives as well. And I think it's time that at all levels of society in Scotland, we take a long, hard look and say, have we got this right? Without us realizing so much has been centralized, and we need to turn that around again. And we need to give power back to those communities, because it ain't working at the moment, and that's for sure. And as John said, not only as we as councillors feel disempowered, but our communities do, and our residents here in the Highlands do as well.
Sure. Can I just ask you both just one quick question on that? I mean, because you've both brought this up before. You know, the Highland Council wants something done, or or a community wants something done, and the Highland Council says, okay, no, or whatever, and then the Scottish government overrules, or like you're talking about here. So, I mean, what is the process after that you've kind of been overruled? Is there anything that you can do about this, or is that the end of the subject? Is it, on to the next one? I know it's a bit of a simple question, but just for people watching, just thinking, well, how do they, how do we go about trying to address this?
Do
Um,
you want to go,
go on
John?
Okay, yeah, I'll dip in quickly. From what I'm aware of, it's like Scottish government at the moment is SNP government. The administration of the Highlands is SNP. I think there is some reluctance sometimes to challenge their fellow party members.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that absolutely. That there are obviously other reasons as well why they might not feel like doing it. As far as I'm aware, once the Scottish government has ruled on something, that's pretty much it. I guess there could be a legal challenge, but the thing is, who as a local authority would want to bring a legal challenge to the government? It's one of those things that almost a lot of people, there's a sharp intake of breath. Oh, we can't do that. So yeah, Andrew might know of some other things, but as far as I'm aware, once the Scottish government says no, this is going ahead, I think it's pretty much taken that the higher power has ruled, and we will have to just accept it. And I guess then it comes to negotiating with the individual contractors, like Balfour Beatty, perhaps, in terms of, okay, so what public benefits can they give? SSE has public funds for communities. Can they use any of that money to help compensate or help reduce the impact on local communities? I think that's potentially the next phase. Thank you. So, Andrew.
Yeah, John makes a really fair point about the current council administration being somewhat reluctant to challenge their own government that is of the same political persuasion. But I think it goes beyond that as well, that actually this creeping centralisation probably started before this current government and went back to the former Labour Liberal Democrat administration in Holyrood, and we've seen it down in Westminster as well with successive Labour and Conservative governments that have had a tendency to centralise. But John's absolutely right. The problem is that once it gets to the Scottish government, there is, and a decision's been made, there is no recourse other than through the courts, which is extremely expensive and time consuming. And the council has to make the judgment, and communities have to make the judgment, is whether that is the best course of action. And that illustrates something that some of us on council have pushed for in various consultations, is that there's no third party right of appeal on planning applications. It's all in the power of the developers. The developers with the resources and the consultants and the lobby groups are behind them can appeal a planning decision, but a local community can't if they object to it, or individuals object it. And the argument always from government is that then that would play into the hands of NIMBYs and those that are opposed to any development whatsoever in their area. But I'm convinced that we could have enough checks and balances in place that we did have a robust third party right of appeal when it comes to decisions like this, and a particular process that means communities do feel empowered again.
I mean, it does seem to me. I mean, you're absolutely right about centralisation, and of course, I mean, would you agree that that creates more friction between the councils and the government? Because we all know that usually the community knows better, but because they're not getting asked, you can have all these projects that go awry, and they don't really work out well at all. And so presumably, when we get more and more centralisation, that friction's just going to grow, isn't it? I mean, is this a dam? Maybe it's not a dam that's going to break, but it seems to be a problem that is just allowed to go on and on and on without any serious consideration of how to change these things. Anyway, we'll let you get on, Andrew. You give us what you'd like to
Well,
bring up.
I'm sort of sticking with roads, actually, as John opened on road, but far more parochial because actually, some of the most issues that I've been dealing with since we last met have been road issues. And somewhat surprisingly, they haven't been the road issues that I would normally expect, which would be community councils saying, when are you going to get this section resurfaced? Or constituents with a pothole that hasn't been repaired or has been repaired badly. Don't get me wrong, I'm still getting that, as I'm sure John is as well. But I've seen a noticeable increase in casework that relates to road safety. And whether that is speeding traffic or particular concerns about traffic going through a particular community, it's very noticeable that that is high on the agenda of people at the moment that are contacting me. And like John, I've had meetings with our local roads manager, Kristen, who is an excellent officer within the council, very approachable, will listen very carefully to what councillors and communities say. Quite often, she might not be able to deliver what we would hope, but she'll at least tell you that. And I'll be, in a way, I'd be interested in feedback on whether this is wider than maybe just my ward and whether it is across the whole of Lochaber. There's people saying that we've reduced the speed limits in in most areas to 20 miles an hour, but actually it's led to worse speeding than we had before, which I still can't get my head around. I was out at the weekend and it was a particular issue in a particular village. People saying, actually, we've got 20-mile-an-hour speed limit now. It's gone down from 30, but we think people are speeding more than they were when it was 30. And whether and this was some of our concerns when the council decided to finally implement the Highland Council-wide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit earlier this summer. And we were, as Liberal Democrats, myself and John, were saying, hang on a minute, before we set it in stone, can we have a year's pause that will allow us to wrinkle out some of these problems that, if a village says, actually, we support a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, but it's not working. We need some road safety measures and traffic calming measures to go into what can be done, what would be effective. Then it would give us an opportunity to do that. Or other communities that say, actually, we probably don't need a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit here. The previous 30-mile-an-hour one was perfectly okay. And is actually now leading to more problems. And I do hope that Highland Council will not simply turn around to communities and say, sorry, it's 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across the council area now. We're not altering it, or we're not doing these other things. So, road safety, speeding, and of course, if we look at the trunk roads, quite a lot of concern about the number of accidents on our trunk road network. I reckon this must be the worst year for really serious accidents that I've seen in the 20 years that I've lived in this part of the world. And what we need to be doing, probably at a national level, to educate and solve this issue. And it's not just overseas visitors. It is also people from our own country elsewhere in the UK and local bad driving habits that contribute to all these issues.
They sure are some issues. I mean, this is the silly season. I mean, honestly, going up. Sometimes I don't even bother going past Glenfin because I'm like, oh my God, what's it like up there? So, what do you reckon to that then, John?
Yes. Completely agree with Andrew. In terms of my experience, or what people are talking to me about, the speed is an issue, the roads are an issue. Certainly in some places, the tourists are an issue. The number of people going up to Skye that go through Invergarry I was coming into Invergarry the other day, and I was doing just below 60, and this Mercedes passed me, and it must have been doing about 85, 90 mile an hour, and that's going into a 30 mile an hour limit, which was about 300 yards away. So, and with that, so Invergarry, they want a pedestrian crossing. Spearnbridge, Roybridge, they need a pedestrian crossing. Not Glenfinnan, but Corpac, they're asking for a pedestrian crossing there. But again, it's this centralisation. Transport Scotland say, sorry, no, we haven't got any money. We're not even going to look at it. So,
well, this is what.
Go on.
I was just going to say that's just what concerns me. You know, going back to what you said earlier, it's like here's the Scottish government saying, no, well, we're going to do that, and we've already got all the, the contractors and that in place. It's always disturbed me that they've got these things in place and the communities have no say in it. But we shan't go there. What would you like to bring up next, John?
Just to follow on that quickly, I think the other problem that we've got with speeding is the enforcement of it. The police force is a lot of the police officers. I really like them. I talk to them regularly. They're doing a really good job. They work round the clock. They can't deal with the workload they've got already. So you can put a speed limit up. You can get local council officers who now can issue tickets on the main A roads. That's a recent innovation. But we haven't got the volume of officers to actually police it effectively. So we've now got the internet as well. So word gets around, okay, yeah, you can do 90 mile an hour on this stretch because nobody's watching. And it goes around the internet. And then, so yeah, that's, I'm bringing up something I don't quite know how to deal with.
What about how does cameras go into this? I mean, the ordinary everyday Joe just sees them, more and more every day. Blimey, you get Yorkshire and Lancashire. It's just, but what is the plans to have more around here? I mean, how does that work out? Will that not help?
I think with cameras, and I'm going to do a bit in terms of the uniqueness of the Highlands now, we are a very diverse community. We are spread across a huge mileage. Now, putting cameras into somewhere like Manchester, where everything is fairly central and you run your cables back to the centre, that's okay. But if you positioned a CCTV unit in Fort William, which is there at the moment, into the sheer job of it. So yeah, I think that it's about the uniqueness of the Highlands and how spread about we are, and we've got these little communities, and yeah, to put cameras in is so expensive that again,
it's something... revenue. I mean, I don't know what the ratio would be, but I mean, they do generate revenue, won't they? But anyway,
yeah.
Oh, John, what would you like to speak? What would your next subject you'd like to bring up?
Right. Cool. I think NHS. We'll go back to that. That's a good favourite. And there's something about the NHS at the moment. I've had a hip replacement recently, sort of 20 odd weeks ago now. But the booklet that I got and the treatment on the National Treatment Centre was superb. I must admit, it was really, really good. The staff were really pleasant. They gave lots of information. But when I followed that up after discharge, the service just hasn't been there. And I'm getting that from a lot of people in my area. I don't know, maybe it's about me. The people I talk to, they're at that same sort of age where their body's going, they're having eye problems or hip problems or whatever. And they're having to travel all the way from Fort William up to Inverness to see a consultant. And again, there's not the service. There's something about a communication between us, the local council, and the NHS. I think that could be improved.
Right, yeah.
And I think working together conjointly is a really good way of doing it. I know we're doing it in some ways. We're doing it with the Belford Hospital. But other areas, I think, would really benefit from that co-working and that communication. And as a councillor, I would actually like more access to the NHS. I would like to be able to go to a specific person within the NHS and say, look, my constituents have got this problem. Can we talk about it? What can you do about it? I can do that with the local council and the officers in the local council, but I can't do that with the NHS, which seems a bit of a mismatch
Yeah.
somehow, that I'm not able to progress things
Yeah,
as
because you
easily.
haven't got,
because
no ulterior motives. You're just generally wanting to help out and facilitate. That
yeah,
shouldn't be a
yeah,
problem, should it?
no, no.
That's really interesting.
It's about separate organisations. It's about the data protection, where I'm sorry, this is confidential. We can't share this
Yeah.
information. I think sometimes that goes a bit too far. And I think, yeah, if we're looking at the interests of the individual, then sometimes it is really appropriate to share that information.
Would it be possible? I mean, is it not possible for that individual to give you consent? You know, say, look, I've got consent here. I'm here trying to find out some information to try to facilitate, like you said, aftercare, or try to improve aftercare, stuff like this.
Yeah, so sometimes that doesn't work. And I guess we need to look at the incidences where it doesn't work. But it's that thing at the moment within the NHS, certain departments like radiology can't look at the GP notes because there's a data protection boundary between the two of them.
Right.
So it's within the NHS as well. And I think that in terms of communication, I think that is something we need to look at.
That is interesting, isn't it, Zach? Well, that's okay. When it's all privatized, they'll all be sharing the information anyway, so we won't have that problem anymore. But honestly,
When that happens,
my wife just had a hip replacement. I've got a friend who's having one. I've had a friend who, honestly, everyone's having hip replacements. I'll have to put myself down for one. But they've all said the same thing. You know, have wonderful, wonderful service, and even my wife and stuff. When she's there, they're all great and stuff. But yeah, there's not much going on afterwards, which is a very important time, because otherwise you might be back there if you're not getting the proper aftercare or proper good information and stuff. And it seems to be a ticking boxing to a certain degree.
Right,
What's your say on this, Andrew?
well, I was amused with your cynicism, Eddie, that we're hurtling towards a privatized NHS. And you're wrong. They won't be sharing data. They'll be selling our data to each
Well,
other
that's exactly
if
what
that
I mean.
happens.
Sorry,
But because it's
they'll be selling our data.
worth a lot of money, our medical data. But there you are. That's another matter. I think John raises an interesting point that actually, from my experience, having been involved as a councillor for over a decade now, is actually the NHS doesn't make use of us as local representatives and doesn't involve us in those early discussions. I don't know whether it's suspicion or it's an attitude that this is a matter for our MSPs, but the division lines blur because our constituents don't understand the distinction between primary care and social care. And of course, council has a responsibility for social care, but it's affected of what happens with primary care. So we should be involved, and maybe it's something that John and I can take up with our Lochaber councillors and say, actually, at a one area committee a year, we would like to have an open and frank discussion with local NHS representatives about the challenges that are faced by our constituents in the area. And I think that would be a useful, not just for our constituents, but actually for NHS managers as well. But also, I think the council don't necessarily take these things importantly. And I'm going to give you an example. I think it was the last full council meeting of this cycle just before the summer holidays in June. We had an NHS director with their annual public health report to the council, which is actually a really, really important document. Provides important information, and it was squeezed in just before lunch, and the convener shut and concluded the whole presentation after the director had presented by saying, well, of course, if there's any councillors with questions or comments that they want to raise about the public health report, they can do so with the director over lunch. Well, as it happened, I couldn't attend in person that day. I was online, and it meant the questions I had couldn't be asked. And I'm sure there were many questions in the chamber that councillors wanted to ask or highlight that were pushed aside. And I think that is a failure by the council and a failure by the convener at sort of sidelining what is a really important discussion and debate for us as councillors in the Highlands, and it should have.
It prevents
Yeah,
you from getting into any discussion and making plans and
absolutely.
trying to
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
absolutely shocking. I'm not shocked, but it's shocking. My word, my word. What's your take on that then, John? Anything more to add to that?
I was actually in the chamber for that meeting that Andrew's just talked about, and I didn't get to ask my questions. And I'm autistic, so sometimes I am more aware of boundaries, and I probably take too much care. But yeah, the gentleman who was giving his report, which is, I think he's finished now, it was his final report. He sat at a table over lunch with other people, and yeah, he was actually talking to them, and it was this group of 3 people who basically got the whole of the lunchtime session, which was very short because we don't any longer have the hour lunch with served meals. And sorry, I'm diverting. I will stop. Yeah.
Okay. Andrew, what do you want to speak about next? What's
Can I just
big on
say to
the agenda?
John makes it sound as though councillors got like silver service at lunchtime, and it definitely wasn't the case. It was more school canteen, very good, but it was school canteen. Nothing fancier than that. It was not full waitress service, and now you've put me on the spot, Eddie, because I was thinking about those lunches that John was talking about. Well, I suppose, and when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I promised myself that there were 2 words that I was not going to use
Okay.
during
Sail
this
away.
discussion. But it's going to happen. It's going to have to happen because people would be amazed if I didn't mention those words, which is the Corrin Ferry.
Yeah.
And I so wish that after all this time that I've been on council, I'm no longer talking about the Corrin Ferry, but I think it would be remiss of us not just to mention what's happened recently with loss of service whilst the spare ferry, the Maid of Glencoe, was still having its annual refit and hadn't returned. And it meant that we had a loss of service again for 5 full, in essence, 5 full working days at the height of the summer, and the impact that that has on our local communities, both sides of the Corrin Narrows, and much wider as well than we might think, because in many ways, the Corrin Ferry is treated somewhat like a land bridge for many tradespeople that are heading from elsewhere in Lochaber down to Mull. I'm always amazed if I get the Lochaber into Fishnesh Ferry, the number of plumbers, electricians, builders from sort of Fort William that are heading across there. And so it has a much wider impact than maybe we think, but certainly what our officers in Inverness think. And my concern is that they haven't listened to what myself and councillors previously and the current set of councillors have continuously said for the at least 5 years, if not longer than that, that until we get a replacement ferry, and that's still some way off and still has quite a lot of uncertainty about it, we are going to see more faults develop on both ferries. We're going to see longer times in refit. That means that we haven't got a backup in place. And we need proper contingency plans that go into effect from the moment that we know that there's going to be an extended loss of service. We had the opportunity to question council officers about this at an area committee last week, and asked them what their response was. And I was disappointed, and John might say I was actually quite tetchy, that we didn't get any answers. And we were actually told, sorry, I can't answer those questions. Well, I'm disappointed that we're not getting the answers that we need, the explanations that we need. And it's almost as a shrug of a shoulder. It's the Corrin Ferry. We know that there's going to be problems with it, and we'll get round to sorting it. And that's unacceptable. And unsurprisingly, we've got some quite prominent businesses on the peninsulas now that are saying enough is enough. It's really having an impact on our business because the frequency of this happening. So we've got companies like Lochaber garages saying, you know, what is the council doing about these? And it's difficult for us as councillors because although I know lots of the answers and I can give those answers, when we ask council officers details and it's not being given to us, yeah, that makes me disappointed and it makes me angry actually. And we really do need officers to get a grip of this situation because it's only going to continue. You know, with the best will in the world, we ordered a ferry today. We're probably looking 2 to 3 years before realistically it's in service. And as each year goes by, there's going to be more faults on the Corin ferry. It's going to be more difficult to get the spare parts. They have to come from places like Germany as it is, or we have had to fabricate parts in the past.
Extortionate prices,
yeah, and extortionate prices. So, yeah. So
I mean,
I had promised myself, and I apologise, Eddie, that I've mentioned those two dreaded words.
No, honestly, because people are always talking about it. I mean, just quickly from my simple observational point of view, you know, I see obviously the Highland, I mean, everywhere's having a tough time, but especially Highland Council with our infrastructure, with our roads, with the congestion in summertime. So the inadequate services that we have, and they're not being kept up to speed. You know, if there's not a really tough, good job being done on them, it just compounds the problems, doesn't it? What do you say, John?
I've got a soapbox somewhere. Just let me dig it out. Yeah,
ferry timetables.
Ferries. I'm going to go back to my soapbox and that thing. For me, it's about planning. If I run a business, I take a certain amount in profit, I take a certain amount in pay, I take a certain amount to buy whatever, and then I take a certain amount to maintain my business. So if my car needs replacing or repairing, I have a reserve for that, and that's in a little pot. I don't see that as having happened. We've got the MV Corin, which is basically, I'm sorry, this is out of respect, it's basically an antique. Hence why we have to have parts specially fabricated. And the advanced planning to say, yes, we're going to need a replacement ferry in 15 years. Therefore, we will start the ordering process now. Not in 15 years' time, but now. And we will plan out what we're going to have and we will look forward. And I think that's what's not happening here. And I think that ethos somehow is applicable to other situations right across the Highland where we're not really looking at it. We've got all these big infrastructure projects and now people are saying, hang on, there's too much. This beautiful area that people want to come to is being spoilt by pylons marching across it. That's a lack of forward planning. It's a lack of seeing what's going on and getting things in place beforehand. So, yeah, and again, Andrew's highlighted it very well, but there is something about Inverness is quite a way away from the Corin ferry, and certainly officers in Inverness do not see the day-to-day problems and the real issues that are happening there because they're not part of that community. But in a lot of cases, the voices of the local councillors, again, aren't really being heard. So there's that. I think it's about planning and it's about communication. And yeah, the Corin ferry is so essential and so much a part of life within Lochaber. And Andrew was quite right in terms of the businesses. I sit on licensing, so I deal with short-term lets, and I have a lot of people saying to me, I'm out on the islands or whatever, I can't get a plumber or an electrician to do this work that satisfies the application because they have to travel so far and they have to stay overnight. And there's some of our local plumbing firms. I won't advertise them. I know one personally. His mother runs a hotel in my area. He's developed a really good business and he works really, really hard. And his lads go out all over the place in the Highlands. And I think that's because he's a Highlander himself and he knows the need and he knows the people. So I'm sorry, I've gone down several side roads there. But yeah,
No, I like that. I like it when an entrepreneur or business person goes out and just works local, and that's it. It has nothing bigger than that. It just wants to create a genuinely good service, and probably not overstep as well. You know, don't get too big for your boots. You know, just have a good, get a good reputation going, and I think it's better for everybody. Right, Andrew, John, what else do we want to bring up next? What else have we got? I mean, I can mention to a couple to you that people have said to
Yeah,
me,
go on.
people in Inverness. Yeah, when I was up there recently and stuff, and I must admit I didn't pay much attention, but I've noticed it when I was down south. Multiple bin structures. What's going on here? I mean, am I just, not looking at it? Am I being a bit lazy? But I thought the system we had has been pretty goodish. But obviously, I don't know. What's the crack with all the new bins and stuff? What's the model of Inverness? How's that gone? Do you know? I mean, what's the crack? Who wants to start me on that one? I'll start
Shall
off
I
with
start,
five.
John? Shall I
go on,
start?
dive in,
Because
Andrew.
I was going to raise this because, I said that what's been on my agenda recently has been roads. I can guarantee what will be on mine and John and the other Lochaber councillors' agenda over the next month. And we will get
Yeah,
the most phone calls and
of course.
emails about changes to the bins. And I'm sort of playing catch up because the decision was
Yeah.
made when I was off the council. So there is a big change, and it's already been rolled out elsewhere, and we're actually the last area to get this. And
Oh, wow.
people I know have already been getting the letters here in Lochaber about the changes. So
Mm,
in essence, it means the introduction of an additional bin for everyone in Lochaber. And for the build-up areas like Fort William, Corpurk, and Cool, a food waste caddy as well.
mm,
So we will have two different recycling bins. So we're going to be separating our recycling, whereas it all goes in the blue bin at the moment.
mm,
And they will be, from memory, and John will correct me, they will be, the two recycling bins will be empty once a month. But one bin will be emptied, let's say, at the beginning of the month, and 2 weeks later, the
all
other
right.
recycling bin will be emptied. The food caddies will be emptied on a weekly basis, I
Yeah.
believe,
Yeah.
and then the normal residual waste is what they call it, will be still collected on a fortnightly basis.
Mm,
So it's going to take some getting used to.
yeah. Yeah.
Our collection days are going to be different. We're going to have to think about what goes in what bin.
Mm,
But I understand the rationale of it, that
mm,
much of it is to meet the government's legislation that says that nothing should be going to landfill from
mm.
next year.
Yeah.
And the waste from Lochaber um, will the recycling will come back to Fort William. It will then be bundled up and taken away elsewhere where it will be separated. It is not going into landfill. And
Mm,
I've seen a lot about that on social media recently, that our recycling is going into landfill and will go into landfill. It's not. It goes away, and it will to a transfer station, and then it will be taken off where it will be separated and recycled accordingly. And then what would normally go into landfill, and is currently going into the landfill at Dusky,
mm,
will actually be taken off and go to a waste to energy plant elsewhere in Scotland. And although it's been transported further, because you've got that energy being produced, in fact, the carbon um, footprint is going to be less than what it is at the moment, from what
okay.
I understand. The downside of all of this, other than
Mm,
complication, is we've got a plethora of bins that I recognise are a bit of an eyesore. I'm fortunate I can drag them off and hide them in my garden. But there's areas in my own ward that we were discussing with officers last week,
yeah.
like the plantation, where
Mm,
actually we haven't got the room for every
yeah.
household to have these
That's a good point.
bins, and we've got areas with flats as well. And we have urged
Yeah.
officers to go
That's
away
true.
and find a a way of dealing with that, but B, I think as important, a way that they are screened in some way so that they're not that visual eyesore, to be blunt, that
that's a good question.
confronts us. In a way, I think probably Highland is catching up where many other councils have been maybe 5 or 10 years ago in urban areas. You go to somewhere like Glasgow or Edinburgh, Eddie, you know, and on bin day, you're confronted with something like 4 bins outside some houses in our cities. So maybe we've got off a little bit lighter up until now. Have I covered everything, John? Am I accurate? I don't want to be pulled up by a recycling officer somewhere in the bowels of Inverness HQ and say you've got this wrong, Councillor Baxter.
I think you're pretty accurate, Andrew. Thank you. The trouble is, it varies from area to area.
Yeah.
Inverness has got the green bin, the blue bin, and the black bin for rubbish, and the food waste bin. Even with this rollout, some areas are not on the food waste rota. Places where I live, like little villages called Newton, we won't be getting this bin rollout until the very end of the whole process. So I'm still on 2 bins. And I think that potentially is a dangerous difference, because you could find neighbours or friends who are saying, oh, no, my bin service is this. So there won't be a uniformity across the Highlands. It's a steady rollout. And yeah, a funny side to this, I was lucky enough to go over to Sweden last year, and I guess I must have been the only tourist taking photographs of the Swedish bin lorries. So that's how far my obsession goes. But yeah, Sweden have a very complex system that seems to work exceedingly well. I think an important thing Andrew didn't highlight was, in terms of people's perceptions, you see the bin lorry, it picks up the bin and it tips it into the back. And you think, hang on, I'm separating all my waste, and then all this is going into the back of a bin lorry altogether. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. It goes into separate sections. So the bin lorries are specifically designed where they have separate sections for each of the different wastes. So no, we're not just throwing it in the back and mixing it all together. That is a common, I think, misperception. And it is about trying to keep waste clean and keep it separate, uncontaminated, as they would say, so that it can go to the transfer stations and be sorted effectively. I banged on about it before in terms of people's awareness. If you put a dirty tin of beans into your metal waste, potentially that contaminates any plastic or other metal that are with it. And some of these transfer stations are throwing away entire bins of waste because they haven't been cleaned. We don't have the facility to clean and wash and air dry all the waste within Highlands. People might not know it, but a lot of our waste goes down to Perth to be processed. So if you're putting in soggy cardboard that is dripping wet, potentially that can contaminate the whole load, and it no longer is recyclable. So it very much is a case of education and information needed. I'm sorry, I'm back to that, aren't I? It's about communication.
It's always about communication, John. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, people will figure out, I suppose, in the end. But there's some good points there, like you said, flats and places and spaces where they're going to put all these bins there. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. And I take it there's no real change to the infrastructure of disposing of all the rubbish and stuff, because you might have noticed it. There's a few smelly places around. You get in the summer and stuff, and you hear about potential, building here to hold rubbish and storage, and you just think, no, please don't. Is everything the same? There's no major plans to be dealing with this new change of bins. The disposal of which will stay roughly the same. Is it going to stay the same?
Similar in terms of changes, there is the new transfer station.
Yeah, Andrew mentioned
being
that.
constructed. I don't think that's actually operational yet. I could be wrong. So yeah, they are having a new facility which will make the processing of that waste a little bit easier.
But it will be transferred sort of out of the, somewhere where it's being held, and if it does smell, it's not annoying anybody.
Yeah, hopefully. We will wait and see.
That's good. That's
You'll
good.
you'll be the first to tell us, Eddie, I'm sure.
Oh, I certainly will. There's nothing worse than going out on a nice sunny day. I used to get it in Inverlochy, and well, yeah, along Inverlochy.
Mm.
Yeah, and some days you go out, it's just a sunny day. It's just like, oh, what a bleeding whiff. Anyway, I'd like to bring up one thing because I've had someone always ask me, what's just quickly, is there anything happening with the 2040 plan? Is there anything interesting there, or has anybody seen anything that they might actually be making inroads on for 2040?
Yes and no. God. Fort William 2040 is talking very well, and they have regular meetings. There are things that they're looking at in terms of transport, and that is a major issue. And I guess we've been successful in getting Transport Scotland to do a more in-depth study in terms of looking at an intelligent transport management system in Fort William. But in the meantime, the queues remain, the congestion remains, and as a councillor, if I want to go down to Mallaig and I've got to go through Fort William, I need to allow loads and loads of extra time for the traffic.
Yes,
and I'm sure that is true of many local businesses and people. I'm not saying I'm the only one who suffers that by a long chunk.
I do look forward to when it's not the busy time. I do. It's like, oh, that's so much easier. What about yourself, Andrew? How's 2040 looking for?
Well, I'm possibly the biggest skeptic on 2040, and previously, council officers would complain whenever I spoke about the 2040 because they thought I was too negative. But I think I was being realistic, and my concern is several concerns. Is that 2040 seems to be, in some circumstances, an excuse to commission another load of consultants to address an issue that has been consulted on several times before.
And you call me cynical.
No, I'm being realistic. I
No, I
remember
agree with you. I agree with you,
Fort
Andy.
William Town Management Plan, which was the predecessor to this, and others, that all of them identify the problem with congestion. Some of them have actually suggested solutions. But the problem is, until the government agencies like Transport Scotland and the Scottish Government and Highland Council actually say, we're going to put money towards these things, it's not actually going to change anything. And I think that's possibly one of the biggest failures with the city region deal was we did not get these projects recognised within the city region deal. And that would have been transformative. That means that we could have got congestion solved in whatever way in Fort William. And my other concern is actually, as a councillor, I'm quite often in the dark as to what the 2040 plan is, where we are. It came up at area committee last week. It was our annual report back on the 2040. And I think it was John maybe raised the issue that actually we need more frequent reports on this, not just once a year. I think it actually should come to every area committee. I'd also quite like to know who is on the 2040 management board or planning board, because I have no idea. I know it's a variety of government agencies, council officers, civil servants from Edinburgh, but I never get to see any of the minutes or what they've discussed or know of what their plans are. And I think that's a fundamental problem. And again, it's this centralization that we were talking about at the beginning, Eddie, that actually these decisions are being made and discussed by people that aren't Lochaber based. And we actually have, between the 7 councillors and other organisations and individuals within Lochaber that have an enormous experience in many of these fields and issues that we're talking about in the 2040 plan, that are not being utilised, and that concerns me. And I also, just as an afternote, what struck me from the report that we got as councillors, that there were lots of projects on there that were completed, and there was a slap on the back. And I've looked back, most of those completed projects were never on the original 2040 plan, and they actually predate it. It's things like the construction of a cinema. Well, that wasn't on the original 2040 plan, and it was actually someone else that actually completed that, a private interest, as we know. And there are other things in there that I think, they're taking credit for these. They were already happening, and it wasn't a result of the 2040 project. But there we are.
Well, I just quickly as a side note, Andrew, when you become our MP for here, you may well do.
MSP, not MP.
Yeah, sorry.
We have a
Oh God,
perfectly good
goodness sake.
member of
Yeah,
parliament at the moment.
when you become our MSP here, then Andrew, it'll be interesting to see how you go on with this, because I mean I know, like you said, and I've said this before, but you want to have all these meetings and stuff, and you want the right for people to have at least the right to see the information and things are being discussed. I think it's a bare minimum, isn't it, to ask? So it'll be interesting to see under what capacity and stuff, or you can do to further that, to help out the local councils. Anyway, that's another subject. We'll go there. We'll go there later. My old friend, my old friend, I used to call him while he was at Westminster, Windbag of Westminster, but he's not going to be challenging anymore, is he? So that'll be
No, great disappointment to the Highlands.
Right, okay, listen, I've got a question I'd like to ask you both, just because it's dear to me. And we had on Saturday, we had the demonstration down in Cameron Square, which was very well attended. It was very, very good and very, very moving and stuff as well. And of course, we had people there speaking about boycott, divestment, and sanctions and stuff. And so I just wanted to ask you guys, is there anything that you're aware of and stuff? I mean, I've had a look. There doesn't seem to be much lately, but I've not delved into it deeply. But is there any initiatives you can see? Is there any talk about what we can do, or what Highland Council can do to, divest from, the Israeli apartheid regime? What's your take on this? Is there anything you guys would like to say on this? Are you hearing anything from the constituents, or?
I've had a couple of constituents raise it with me. And first of all, let me say that I am horrified at what has happened in Gaza. I recognise that, the terrorist attack on Israel was a horrific thing. And I understand that there was support for Israel to take action against Hamas. But we've gone beyond what was just action. And I think anyone would recognize that. And that is what concerns me, is that quite often, if you say that, then you are automatically labeled as anti-Semitic. I think that is wrong. You can be critical of Israel and the actions that they can take, but supportive of the Jewish nation. And they are very two distinct things, and I would say that from the outset. And what we now have is a humanitarian disaster in Gaza. And I like to say thank you to you, Eddie, and those that joined you at the event on Saturday. I'm sorry I couldn't join you because of other commitments, for keeping the issue at the forefront of people's minds here in the Highlands. I have history on this, actually, because way back, and I looked it up the other day, but I think it was 2013, I joined forces with an Inverness councillor, Donny, and I've forgotten his surname all of a sudden, but he was an SNP councillor who had left the SNP group and sat as an independent.
Was he quite a young man?
Hmm?
Was he quite a young man?
No, quite an older guy. Donny Kerr, there you are, Donny Kerr, no longer on the council. And he was a long-time supporter of the Palestinian cause and their right to exist as a sovereign state. And he asked if I would second a motion that, in essence, asked for an ethical investment policy from Highland Council, and for us to look at the investments that we made and how they supported Israel. And although I was somewhat hesitant about it, I was prepared to second it. And I think it surprised many of my colleagues at the time, because of my political background, that I was taking a stance on this. And I spoke in favour of the motion. And what I was disappointed with was how that debate was shut down and blocked by councillors of all political parties and of none. There were some that walked out of the meeting saying that we should not be discussing this. It had nothing to do with Highland Council. And I think much of the opposition was prompted by professional advice from officers and investment professionals. And we didn't get anywhere further forward. But I do think it's an important debate. I'm not aware of opinions having changed in when it comes to ethical investments within the council.
Concerning, Andrew, with all that's going on.
Yeah, and as a result, I'm not sure we would get any further forward if we were to bring this to the council again. But I'm always willing to be persuaded otherwise if I thought that there was realistically a chance that we can change people's opinions. And you're right, Eddie. I think that is an amazing attitude considering what has happened and how very much we are aware of it from what we've seen in the press and on our television screens.
Yeah. John?
Just quickly, I have a friend and colleague who is Jewish, Anita, known her for many years, and yeah, a very warm relationship we both have. So yeah, I'm not anti-Jew, but I am anti what Israel is doing at the moment. It is against human rights. It feels like, and I probably can't mention that word, but it does feel like it's eradicating a certain characteristic of a population, and I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. The other thing that I do find concerning, and Andrew sort of said it in some ways, is the way that is not being listened to. There was a very powerful photograph of this older lady being put down on the floor by, I think, 5 or 6 police officers. And there were some comments to it. Oh, it now takes 6 police officers to control a little old lady with a placard. No, that frightens me.
Yeah,
I don't want to go down that road. We have a freedom of speech. I'm sorry, we need to hang on to that desperately. And that is the big thing in terms of, okay, so how is this affecting us? How is this affecting me? The concern is about my freedom of speech. And be it a government in Westminster or a government in Holyrood or the local council, I'm sorry, I do not want anybody silencing me if there's an issue that is important and that I want to talk about.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the people who spoke at the demonstration, Derek from Highland Palestine, and they've done quite well. They've had some quite successes, but it seems to me, if I get him right, I need to look over it again. But I think he's certainly in the process of trying to get off like what he called apartheid-free zones. You know, he's literally looking at trying to get, working with, say, Highland Council to try and form, even just the idea to get people signed up as best they can to an apartheid-free zone. I don't know. I mean, something like that, to me, it might have some traction. I mean, it's good just talking to you guys about this on the council, and I'm glad that you have spoken, frankly about it, because the way I see it, and when we speak to people, I'm sure you agree, this affects us all. This is about our morality, our humanity. So yeah, and we're losing our rights to protest. Like you said, it's no coincidence this came at the same time, John. So yeah, these are really, really big issues. Anyway, I better leave it there. Is there anything else you would like to speak to before we wrap it up this time? Any issues that we're missing out on? I think I sort of covered mine. People, what they're saying, bins, roads, ferries. Yeah.
I think on Fort William 2040, I'm just going to throw in 2 items, and I'm just going to mention them. The cool link road.
Oh, yeah,
yes, yeah, you got.
Yeah.
And cool itself, and what becomes a part of the master plan and what doesn't become a part of the master plan. Just to mention those. So that's me on that. Thank you. Andrew?
No worries. We can.
I have one thing, and this isn't party political at all, but of course, there's a by-election coming up in Lochaber again, 25th of September, Coolan Mallet by-election, where the residents there have an opportunity to elect a councillor to serve alongside John. And I will say this to anyone: we take our democracy for granted. Look at what's happening in Israel and Palestine, and how democracy is so important for the future of this world. And a local government by-election in September may not seem particularly important, but it is an opportunity for residents in that area to elect another councillor to do a job alongside John and his colleague Liz. And I would say this is your opportunity to have a say. And it doesn't take you a lot of effort to go down to the polling station or to apply for a postal vote. And whatever you might think about politics and all the parties at the moment, please exercise that right and have your say.
Yeah, it's the first thing you've got to do, isn't it? Listen, thank you so much for bringing that up, Andrew, because honestly, I just thought that was a given, and I'd mentioned that. I was going to say it's like buses. Sometimes there's not enough candidates, and then suddenly you get this by-election for one, and like everyone wants to take the position. But it's good to see. It's good to see. Maybe in the future, like I know you've said before, Andrew, maybe we'll get some more younger folk in as well. We'll see. Yeah, that would be cool. Okay, well, listen, it's been really, really informative and really, really good talking to you. Really good talking to you guys. Good luck with everything. We'll meet up again in 3 months if that's okay. And yeah, and keep in contact. It'll be great to catch up soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much, John. No worries.
Thank you.
I'm just going to press record, finish here, and then I'll say, where is the record? Oh, there we go.